All right, it is already time for the November reading list. But before I get to that, just want to say this is going to be the last time that I do one of these reading list videos from this office. We're moving to a place that's a little better set up for our son who has some pretty severe special needs and needs 24/7 full-time care forever. So we're going to build that place, but in the meantime, we're going to go to a temporary place for a little bit. So I'll miss these books and these shelves and being surrounded by these weapons and my whiskey and everything else that I have in here. But we'll get a temporary place set up for a year or so and build the next chapter in this journey. So also setting up a very cool offsite office that I hope to be able to share over the next year and a half. That's going to be pretty sweet. So anyway, let's get on with the November reading list video. But before we get to books, let's talk about these things. What is this? So this is a staccato. I think they call this one the P model right here. You can check that. Oh yeah, pretty sweet. I shot these things at Thunder Ranch not too long ago, and this is the C2 model right here. So this one is more for carry. But I shot these things at Thunder Ranch, and oh man, amazing. These things are so sweet. So thank you guys at Staccato. I can't wait to get on the range and really put these things through the paces soon. So very cool. Thank you. Bam! Grizzly Forge. Look at that blade. Amazing. Veteran owned, veteran operated, veteran forged. So this has my name on it right there. Little Black Raffle Coffee symbol on there as well. You can see that. That's pretty sweet. So amazing. Thank you, Grizzly Forge. Check him out. He's doing some awesome work. And what else do we have here? African Sporting Creations. Very cool letter opener right here. And a very cool pen. You might not know this, but I have a thing about pens. Got quite the collection going. So this is a pretty sweet pen, made with some wood from Africa. So African Sporting Creations, they make they import the Courtney boots that you might have read about in some of the novels. And anyway, check them out if you're looking for some old school boots that have quite the legacy behind them, which is why I use them in the book and why I use them in Africa when I was out there doing the anti-poaching training as research for True Believer. All right, what else we have here? Bam! Larry Vickers Guides. As you can see right behind me there, they're never far from reach as I'm writing the weapon-centric portions of my novels. And this one, all about SIG. And I was so honored they asked me to write something about SIG, the P226, because it was on my side for each one of my deployments and have a little section in here. So such an honor to be asked to do that, and these things are amazing. If you don't have these books, these coffee table books, there's nothing else like them out there. So I go to these all the time as I'm doing the research for my novel. So very cool. Larry, thank you so much. Awesome. Let's see, what else is going on here? Ooh, SIG. So I got that cross, and I'm sighting it in with this Elite Hunter 130 grain 6.5 Creedmoor. So I'll be taking that out on a hunt here shortly. So very cool, excited to give this a go. And Eric Snyder, man, look at that. Don't tell the guys at Black Rifle Coffee, but I put honey and cream in my coffee. Shh, don't tell them. So Eric Snyder, thanks, brother. Appreciate you thinking of me and giving me this. And for those that don't know, Eric has the Defender 110 that I based the Defender 110 from Savage Son on. And Mike from Last Line of Defense did a video on it that should be dropping shortly. And speaking of Mike from Last Line of Defense, awesome. Can't wait to try this belt. And this holster. So this is an appendix rig for my SIG P365 with an extra mag in there. So I'm going to give this a run here on the appendix side of the house. So Last Line of Defense holsters. Thank you guys so much. All right, before we get to those books, crazy. Wheels of Field, Mike Scobie, and everybody out there. Thank you guys so much. This is so cool. It was awesome to have you guys come out and do this photo shoot and get to hang out for a little bit. And look at that. this is if you haven't read the novels, I have a thing for Land Cruisers, and this is the one that the Land Cruiser in the books is based on. So very cool. Wheels of Field, bam. And Ballistic. How crazy is this? What? Yeah. 2 different covers. One in the office. Hey, look at that. Right here. And then one out here in Utah with the cross. So very cool. Ballistic. Thank you guys so much. We talk about the weapons from the books in here. Talk about the Land Cruiser, very special typewriter that someone gifted me recently. It was such a great experience. So thank you guys at Ballistic Magazine. Very cool. All right. I think that brings us to the November reading list. So for those of you that are just joining this and haven't seen the reading list before I left the military, I was asked to put together a professional reading list. So I did that. Don't know if they ever actually used it or not, but put together a professional reading list. And then after I started writing, people started asking me for recommended books. So I've taken some of the books that I put on that professional reading list for the Naval Special Warfare Center and then added the different books that influenced me at different points along my journey. So every month I pick 6 of those and put them on a blog, post about them, and talk about how they were impactful to me as I went along. So this is the November reading list. So Fatherland. So gosh, this one by Robert Harris. This is crazy. I read this book probably a few years after it was written. So mid-90s I read this, and it creates a fictitious future from like 1942, and then this book takes place in 1964, and the Nazis have won World War II, and it's a murder mystery set in that environment. So just so well written. To me at the time, I hadn't read anything like that before. It was fantastic. It stands out as one of the best thrillers that I've ever read. So Fatherland, Robert Harris, amazing. Red Storm Rising, bang, Tom Clancy. So this may be his magnum opus. It might be his longest as well, but this is his second novel after The Hunt for Red October, which I read in about, I think, 5th or 6th grade. This one was his second one. So all eyes were on him. It doesn't feature Jack Ryan, but I had this book in mind when I wrote my second novel, True Believer, because I knew that people would be watching, and just like they were watching Tom Clancy back in the day. So he did something a little different than his first book here with this one. And I have a soft spot in my heart for Without Remorse, of course, because it's the John Clark origins story, and because of his background as a SEAL in Vietnam, I was so excited for that book to come out. But if backed into the corner, I might have to say that this is Tom Clancy's greatest work. So anyway, I haven't read this since high school. So that's when I read this one. It came out a couple of years after The Hunt for Red October. Read this early on in high school, probably as a freshman, maybe a sophomore. But I remember it. I remember the magic I had reading this book and how special it was. And I don't know if I want to go back and reread it because I don't want to ruin that magic. But I might one of these days. I might go back and give it a test read and see if it still has that magic that I remember from back in the mid '80s when I read this. So Red Storm Rising. If you haven't read it, if you're a Tom Clancy fan of the movies, of some of the other books, and haven't explored this, do so. Red Storm Rising. All right. Learning to Eat Soup with a Knife, John Nagel. So I read this in probably 2006 when there was an insurgency going on within the military. People that were thinking a little differently, that were studying insurgency, studying the history of insurgencies, the history of terrorism, looking at our enemies and how they had adapted to a new battlefield. And he was one of those guys. He was essentially an insurgent, along with guys like H.R. McMaster, Thomas Hames, David Kilcullen. But this studies the British experience in Malaya and the American experience in Vietnam, really through the lens, the modern lens of the War on Terror. So this one, if you haven't read this and you're a statesman, a politician, a military leader, Learning to Eat Soup with a Knife, which comes from T. Lawrence's Seven Pillars of Wisdom. So, and it starts with that quote. It says, to make war upon rebellion is messy and slow, like eating soup with a knife. T. Lawrence, Seven Pillars of Wisdom. So he got the title from that, and I think it's just a brilliant title. So awesome. Learning to eat soup with a knife. And the accidental superpower. If you've followed me for a while, you know how impactful this book was to me as I was setting off to write my second novel, True Believer. So I read this on the plane to Africa, where I was going to Mozambique to do research for that second novel. And I hadn't even submitted the first book to Simon & Schuster. There was no there was no book deal yet or anything like that. But I always knew I was going to write two, because John Grisham, he wrote A Time to Kill first, and he couldn't give that thing away. Next, he writes The Firm, so he didn't stop. He didn't get discouraged. Well, he might have got discouraged, but he kept going. That's the important part. He kept moving forward, wrote The Firm. That's the one that took off and put him on the map. And then they went back and republished A Time to Kill, which I think is his best work. So with that in mind, I was already writing my second novel even before I submitted that first one to Simon & Schuster. And on the plane to Africa, to do that research, I read this. So this really laid the geopolitical backdrop for what's going on in True Believer. Because I also knew I had to do something different than I had done with The Terminal List for that second novel. And this gave me that foundation. So highly recommend this book. And what a fantastic guy. We've connected now, Peter Zian, and we've connected on social media. Hope to sit down with him and share a drink one of these days. So very cool. Accidental Superpower. Get it. Now this one, my gosh, this is such a special book. Book of Honor by Ted Goop. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly there, but gosh, I read this in, I think probably 2000 or so, pre-September 11th. And this is about the CIA memorial wall, which I'd see a few years later in person. And now I know a few of those names attached to the stars on that wall. So if you've read my novels, especially the second one and the third one, you'll know that there are some scenes in there that have to do with that memorial wall. So I got a lot of that information from this because this book made such an impact on me. And this reporter, he wanted to know the stories behind some of those stars on the wall, some of the ones that did have names and a lot of the ones that didn't have names attached, because what had happened was still classified. So Book of Honor, highly recommend this for any American, and it's eye-opening, it's powerful. Book of Honor. Thanks for writing this, Ted. Amazing. All right, Killing Pablo, Mark Bowden. So after Black Hawk Down, he wrote this, and I'd read Black Hawk Down as soon as it came out, and then of course I got Killing Pablo as soon as this came out as well. I'd read the news reports about the Medellin cartel. I'd seen them, of course, in Time and Newsweek, and back then before in the pre-internet days, and studied it as much as I could. But this was so eye-opening because it talked about a lot of things that I think probably a lot of them are still actually classified today. And if he was in the military or had been attached and had submitted this, there'd probably be a lot of portions blacked out, I would guess. I learned a lot from it, and I still use actually a lot of what I learned in here. And I give a nod to this book in True Believer. I won't tell you exactly where it is. You'll have to find it. So just wanted to make sure I tip my hat to the guys that were out there that helped make this happen. Fascinating read. Killing Pablo, Mark Bowden, definitely pick this up. It's an incredible read. Okay, what else? I think that's about it. There's a few things left on the site. I think we're getting another shipment of these guys, and these went very quickly. Yeti mugs, beer mugs, but I drink my coffee from a beer mug, so dual-use technology. So that's coming back on the site soon. I think there's some hats coming back soon, and all those proceeds go to the veteran-focused organizations that are highlighted on the site. Just a little way to give back. It's not much, but it's a little something that I can do to give back. So so check that out. Check out that stuff, and I think that is it. So once again, signing off from this office here in the mountains of Park City, Utah. I'm sure going to miss that view, but we'll make something else happen at the next place that's equally as cool. So take care, be safe out there, keep moving forward, and keep fighting.